What's going on, everybody? Today, just at my storage unit right now. Gonna start doing some stuff on the my app. I bought this stuff actually like a while ago and just never got around to actually doing it. It also doesn't help that I don't really have a garage, so I'm gonna be attempting this in my condo garage. But anyway, this morning I'm at my storage unit to come pick up the stuff that I need. Can't have it all in my condo storage, I don't have enough room. But anyway, coming to a storage unit, it's amazing what like people just like leave behind. Like, hey, your computer's there, or hey, your picture of your kid on a horse, on a pony is here. You should probably get that. Or how about like, let's just leave this like banquet thing just laying around. Anyways, always fucking blows my mind as to what like people will just like leave laying around. It's like, do you not like want that shit? Like, I don't know. I got a bunch of goodies in here. I've been kind of like hoarding and stockpiling stuff for the Miata since I purchased it. Nothing crazy, but just, you know, the essentials. All right. Ye old storage unit. There's my tools, just some random shit laying around. But what we're going to do today is in these boxes right here. So we're going to grab these. We're going to throw them in the back of the good old Grand Cherokee. And we are going to take those back to my condo. All right, it's amazing what you uncover when you're in your storage unit that I forgot about. If anybody on the channel needs a PCI fixed seat base for Del Sol, let me know. Additionally, we've got some Hawk DTC 60s for an S2000. I believe those are also hub-centric rings for an S2000. And this right here is a PCI for EK, EG, DC, I believe EF as well, the spherical rear trailing arm bushing or rear trailing arm replacements. Anyways, yeah, that stuff's just laying around. There's my trim removal tools and needles. But this is what I was most interested in. Oh yes, these are for the Miata as well. And you can probably guess.
Eternity later.
Give me a break. Oh, yes. This is the best de resistance. It's crazy because like on the video, you can't really even see the concave. Like you just don't see it. Like visually here, it doesn't just represent. Anyways, these are a 16 by 8 by a plus 24. So these are like the perfect fitment for the Miata. But the dish really doesn't look, it just doesn't come out on the video like it does in person for some reason. But rest assured, it is got, I think it's because of the wide angle. Anyway, rest assured, this has got like some really nice concave to it. I believe it's like face 4 is what they call it. Anyways, it's got like a really good, a fair amount of concave to it. It's like, there we go. That's maybe a little bit better idea representation there. But yeah, can't wait to get these on the Maya. All right, also, if anybody in Mazda land can tell me why every one of these has this like little, what looks like a reclining chair stickers on all the labels. If somebody can explain that to me, I'd love to find out what, like, is this like, hey, relax, you've got this, like, just sit back, it's okay? Or is it like, take it to the dealer while you sit back and relax because you're in for some fun times? I don't know. I watched a few videos on how to install this appearance kit. It's not the end of the world. And anyways, we're gonna get it in the back of the vehicle. Somehow dust is still not on. listen to her purr. Oh, I miss this thing. Now, for those of you who don't know, what I was doing there was essentially a dry start procedure. So if you haven't started the vehicle in a long time, and in this case, I haven't touched this in about a month and a half, basically what you do is clutch down, accelerator right to the floor, and then you hit the start button. And what that does is it actually just cranks the vehicle over without ignition. So you don't get any ignition spark or any fire, but what you do get is you get the starter cranking the motor, which then obviously helps prime the system with oil and gets everything started. Because it's been about a month and a half, and a lot of that oil that was sitting at the top end of the cylinder head and everything has just kind of made its way down in the pan, we don't want to really start everything dry. That's why we just kind of prime the system, get the oil pressure up, and then give it a start. And as you can tell, this thing started up flawlessly without even any sort of strange noises or anything. Typically, we get like snow this time of year. It's the end of December. We're actually almost at New Year's. And there's been very little snow, just a little bit of a dusting. And they've only salted the road a little bit, but we've had a few days of heavy rain. And it's got me tempted to take this thing out on the road because I feel like the roads have been washed up of all the salt, but I don't really want to. Now, one of the things I'm going to check here is that going back to earlier in the year, you may have heard me mention this a couple times in some of my videos, and then most recently in this one, I had an incident where I hit a fairly large crater on the road, and it was almost unavoidable. And it was the right side, so the front tire caught it a little bit, but the rear tire took the brunt of it. And it actually damaged my BBS forged wheel. And I had this big bout with the city, and the city basically is gonna repair it, or at least send me a check to pay for the repairs. It's been an ongoing process. As a matter of fact, I just got confirmation that they're gonna pay me out, and I had to sign a release just last week, but I have yet to see the funds still, and it's been over 6 months. So it's been a process, and I'm not overly happy about it, but we have come to a resolution, and it is what it is. Maybe I'll make a video about it at some point, but I'll pop up some pictures of the area in question, and then I'll also pop up a picture of the damaged wheel so you guys can see. I did a visual inspection. I've obviously been driving the vehicle since. I've probably put about 4,500 kilometers on the vehicle since the incident, and I haven't had any issues. However, my alignment seems to be perfect. There doesn't seem to be any problems there. I did do a visual check. I put the vehicle up in the air, and nothing seemed loose. Nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary. But the one thing I am going to check is, now that we know that we've got the wheels on the ground and completely straight, is I'm just going to check with just a simple measuring tape here, just the wheel gap, and make sure that nothing has been pushed. So just take some measurements. I mean, as a preliminary check, that's always a good idea. It's never going to give you a real accurate representation, short from putting this on an alignment rack, but everything appears to check out there. We're going to get the vehicle up in the air anyway to do the appearance package, and when we do, I'll just have a look underneath and double check and just make sure that our control arm mounts to where they mount on the subframe. There's no issues there. I mean, it becomes pretty evident. I've seen vehicles before in the past where when they have an issue like that, the mount points at the chassis or the mount points at the subframe, you can usually tell they've been tweaked a little bit. I don't suspect that that's the case here. The number one indicator is going to be when you drive the car. There's obviously going to be some sort of push or alignment situation. And immediately after the incident, the alignment was perfectly fine. So again, I think the wheel took the brunt of the damage, but it's always good to check. Anyways, here's my new light I got from Amazon. It's my Bosch. It's unfortunate that Bosch doesn't make more automotive equipment, and they really make only like construction equipment, but my impact, my drill, everything is from them. And then I just picked up this neat little pad here, because I always hate putting my old pad, went for, these ones that come with these things are crap. And I went for crap anyway. So anyway, I picked up that pad, and it's got nice grooves for the pinch welds. And, instead of being metal on metal, even the pad that comes with these jacks, they're a very thin pad. Anyway, that's going to provide substantial material to, hold on to the pinch weld and lift it up. And we'll get some jack stands underneath the vehicle and go from there. All right, now that we got the car secure on jack stands, I raised the vehicle on the pinch weld using my jack and the rubber pad. And then I placed the jack stands beneath the subframe connector where the subframe and the chassis sits. That's a pretty solid point in the chassis. I don't really like putting those U-style jack stands on the pinch weld because I do find that they do, the little fingers that rise up on the side, I find that sometimes they can dig into the body, and I'd much rather not do that. And I feel more secure about a more like solid point in the chassis. So anyways, we're sitting up on jack stands right now. As you can see, the vehicle's kind of elevated in the air. I'm gonna get underneath it and I'm gonna start doing an inspection, just making sure everything is okay, and then we'll get started on this install. All right guys, one thing I'm gonna point out is my level of OCD here. So the car's sitting in storage in my parked underground temperature controlled condo garage. I have a cover on the car. The car has been oil sprayed. Even though I never intended to drive it in the winter, I still took it to Crown. I still had it oil sprayed because there's a lot of product out there, you know, the lanolin based product, the lanolin wax based product, you know, honey seal, all that stuff. I just find that Crown is great. It creeps into everywhere. It's a nice thin coating. Yeah, you do it annually if you want to. Not that I drive this in the winter, but the nice thing about it is that you don't have to worry about it ever needing to be reapplied, right? You just reapply it annually. You know you're gonna reapply it. Whereas in the lanolin-based, you know, wax, that stuff's expensive. You know, you pay $1,000 to put that on, and like you just assume and hope for the best that it stays there. Anyways, everything looks mint under here as it should. You know, the vehicle's only got about 6,000 kilometers, but I even, as an added precaution, because concrete does sweat and it will dissipate moisture, so I've laid down this, I don't know, this cardboard paper, I suppose, as a protective barrier to eliminate any condensation or whatever. I still have to get some pads for my tires. I might actually just leave the vehicle up on jack stands. I don't know, I might just get 2 more jack stands and just prop the vehicle up and leave it parked like that. But anyway, I wanted to take you beneath the vehicle to just show you, you know, why, in my opinion, and I'm not knocking the new 8.6. My son has a BRZ, new BRZ. They're a beautiful vehicle. I've obviously had plenty of the first gen, but this is what makes, you know, the Miata different. This is a bespoke car. Like, this is made not from parts bin. Every part that's on this car is almost unique to this car. But some of the things that justify the price, yes, it's expensive. It's much more expensive than an 8.6 or a BRZ. But, you know, I've got the Bilsteins and the Brembos, as we can see here. But look at this. I just point this out. That's an aluminum front knuckle. Yes, I know the new BRZ comes with aluminum front knuckle, but the 8.6 does not. That's an aluminum control arm. There's all sorts of sound deadening and insulation material. If I crawl back here, as you can see, like, you know, there's all sorts of sound deadening and insulation, heat insulation material, you know, that you can see everywhere. You know, that's part of the engineering that goes into it. Look at these cross braces from the factory. You know, that's all from the factory. There's the X brace way back there. That's all factory. All this insulation right here, that's factory. Okay, that's not like from rust proofing or anything like that. Like, that's all factory stuff, right? But look at this. Aluminum control arm. You know? But this is something you're not gonna get in an 8.6 or BRZ. You see that? Camber adjustment. Yes, from the factory. So, anyway, I just want to point out these things. Yes, it's a more expensive car, but the reason it's more expensive, there's a lot of engineering that goes into this car, and I'm not even going to touch the whole FA24, like the new 2.4 liter and the issues, the oil starvation. Yes, Mazda's been known to having some transmission issues with the first gen NDs. There's a lot of second gen NDs that have no issues. This, I believe, is the 5th iteration of this transmission. For what it's worth, Mazda makes their own transmissions. They don't outsource it. This is a Mazda specific unit. They are much better in the ND2. I have not had any issues, and a lot of guys in the ND2s don't have issues. However, the engine, the 2 liter in here, is designed to maintain consistent oil pressure at 1.4 G. It's definitely not something that can be said with the 8.6. So anyways, just nerded out over this. We're gonna get to what we need to do here, but yeah, just wanted to point that out.